Okay, Muse. I just came back from a 10-mile run, so I'm a little bit gross. Fortunately, smell doesn't travel through video. At least not yet. Although I believe at a time way back in maybe the 50s or 60s, they did experiment with like scratch and sniff movies. Back in the heyday of B horror and B sci-fi. Yay. So, I have a theory that I want to discuss with you. It's a new theory. It's one that I've developed. Well, sort of developed. It's based on something else. I'm smiling because there's a bit of tongue-in-cheek here. Sort of. I think a while ago you and I had a discussion as to how I get affected when I come to the end of writing a book. I guess I should have prefaced this by saying I finished the Ghosts of Brookhaven. Yay! And as I get nearer to the end of a book, it all kind of starts slowing down. And there's a dog barking somewhere. I start slowing down because many times, most times, 90% of the time, I don't want the book to end. So I drag out the writing of the final chapter of the book. And I kind of left it at that for the longest time. I just always assumed that the reason why it took me longer to write the end of a book than it did the beginning of the book was simply because I didn't want it to end. Well, while writing The Ghosts of Brookhaven, something fascinating happened to me. And it led me to develop what I call the Writer Entanglement theory. Now, this is kind of related to quantum entanglement, which very roughly states that the state of one particle, if two particles are entangled, when one particle is affected by something, the particle that it is entangled with will be affected in the same way. So, for example, you have particle A in dimension 1 and particle B in dimension 2. And when something happens to particle A, particle B feels it. Now, that's a very layman's way of describing quantum entanglement. And I'm not a quantum physicist, so some of it goes way above my head. But I try to understand a lot of things. But anyway, let me explain to you what writer entanglement theory is. Writer entanglement theory, it really is just another way of saying that a writer becomes incredibly empathetic to the end of their book. Because what happens at the end of a book, generally speaking, is you hit the big climax of the story, and then you have the denouement. When you hit the big climax, all the big bad things are happening, or maybe not the big bad things are happening, but the exciting things, the climax of the story. And at the climax of the story, whether you're a writer or a reader, you're terribly engaged in what's happening. It's exciting. The ride has reached its peak. And as a writer, I become incredibly entangled with the characters and the story, everything. Such that, and it really hit me hard with The Ghosts of Brookhaven because of all the things that were going on in the book. I can't tell you any of it because the book's not out yet. The book hasn't even been to beta readers yet. I've got to reread it before I let it go into the beta readers. But I realized that I was carrying all of this stuff from this book that I'm writing into the real world. And that it had affected me in such a way. And here's the thing. It's one thing, and there is a chasm between being a writer and being a reader, because I am both. When I'm really engaged in a book, I'm really, it's really got a hold of me when I'm reading it. When I'm not reading it, when I close the book and I put it aside for the day or the night, I can step away from it. I can let go of it. and I can go about my life. When I'm writing a book, however, it's different. Because when I'm writing a book and I get really, really engaged, I'm always really engaged with them, but when you get to the end, you reach this state as a writer where it's almost as though you're holding your breath all day or all night, waiting to get back to that story so you can know what's going to happen next, because you've got to fill in the missing pieces and finish it. And it profoundly affects you. And it really hit me this time, because I did not know how this was going to end. I never know how my books are going to end. But this time it was like I couldn't let it go at all. And I was living this story when I wasn't even writing it. It was running through my mind constantly. And even if I wasn't consciously thinking about it, it was there in the back of my head. And I was trying desperately not to jump ahead and put the pieces together for the end when I wasn't writing it, because I don't like to do that, because I've done that before, and I have been away from the book file, and I have all of a sudden started letting things unravel in my head and try to write an ending of a book. And by the time I get back to the actual writing of it, I've forgotten what I had thought of, or I realized that what I had thought wouldn't work. So I always like to just not think about it, or not actually actively try to write the end of the story when I'm not actually doing it. I want to write it when I'm writing it. Does that make sense? So when writer entanglement theory happens, you are caught up so profoundly in the work that when it has paused, it's almost like you're paused. And you keep thinking, I've got to get back to this book because I'm on hold, and I'm on hold in a state that is either highly excited or fearful. Whatever is happening to these characters in this book, they're on pause in that state, and you find yourself on pause in that state, and it is disturbing. And you want to be able to let go of it, but you can't, because you're entangled in it. And it's all you can do to be able to function and step a step away from it and go about your day. Now, it doesn't happen with every book. It didn't happen with, I don't think it happened with the last Fear book, and that has nothing to do with whether or not I'm how high my engagement is in the book. It just has to do with, partially with the characters and the fact that the Ghosts of Brookhaven was very new to me. It was completely new to me. I had never written this in this genre before. So it was very genuine to me, and it was a thrill and very precious to me to write this book, because I've been wanting to write a book like this for a very long time. And it's also because of the nature of this genre, the gothic ghost story. It is by nature somewhat precious anyway. The sensibilities of it are different than a modern book or a post-apocalyptic book. There's more subtlety to it. There's more grace to it, and so you find yourself in that mental state, and you live there, And I found that because of so many different aspects of this book, my my empathy and sympathy was heightened for these characters and this situation. And I couldn't let it go. I still don't want to. I finished the book and I still don't want to let it go. I can still. It's and it's partially also because I don't know why, but the writing of this book, it was so easy, easier than normal, because usually I have a very easy time with picturing the scenes, how they play out in my head. But this time it was just like three-dimensional, like stereoscopic. I can't even describe it. It was like I tapped into something other in the writing of this book. And that there were times when I would sit down to write, and it was almost like a meditation wherein my brain just let go and my fingers just typed. And I didn't know. It was almost like I didn't realize what was happening. I was just living it. I was watching the movie in my head, and my fingers were on autopilot typing it out. It was a beautiful thing. And that's probably partially why I got so entangled in this story at the end, such that I couldn't let it go. And I hope that in future books that I can reach that same point, although I would rather not have to deal with the frustration that came along with it, in that I'm trying to function during the day and I'm still thinking, oh my gosh, what's happening to Betsy Potts and all, Glita and the rest of the gang, oh my gosh. So, but I still want to be able to get that feeling back, that experience, to connect with a story on that level. I think the first time that ever happened to me was when I wrote I, Zombie I. And it was like this world opened up to me, and it drew me in, and I wrote without writing, or I wrote without knowing that I was writing. It was very zen. It was just, I wrote. I unconsciously wrote. I put my fingers down and I wrote the first word. I closed my eyes, I opened my eyes, and the last word was written. That's kind of how it was. And strangely enough, the beautiful thing is I don't remember it happening. I don't remember starting it. I don't remember the middle of it. I just remember it ended. It just happened. It was almost like I went, and there was a book. Not to say I slept through it. It was like I closed my eyes and I dreamt this story into existence. And I think that that's what every writer should strive for. That kind of ease. That kind of entanglement with your story and your characters. That writer entanglement theory. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm an artist. Most everything out of my mouth sounds, seems, feels crazy. I'm going to expound on this theory. I'm going to take it to further depths. I'm going to dig in and see what I can mine with it. See if there's any veracity to it, any truth to it. But in the meantime, I'm just thrilled that it happened, and I'm really thrilled that the Ghosts of Brookhaven came out the way it did, and fingers crossed that what was in my head came out into the file, and the beta readers will say yes, more, please. Oh, speaking of more, let's talk about more. So here's what's going to happen in the future. I have reached out to my publisher, and here's something exciting. I mentioned this on Facebook. Long time ago, I had devised that I was going to write a sequel series to the iZombie series. And that series was going to be called The Book of Jacob. And I set it aside because I kind of set aside the iZombie series because I needed to move on from it. But after writing the Fear series, I realized that I wanted to actually, what started this was I listened to a Coheed and Cambria album, and it reminded me of the iZombie series, and I realized that I wanted to go back to it. But it's been too long for me to go back to that series. So I thought I'm going to do what I said I was going to do and write the Book of Jacob series. So I told my publisher about it, and they said, "We want it." So now here's what's going to happen. I'm going to go back after I finish the Ghosts of Brookhaven. Once it's ready, I'm going to write the 4th book in the Reaper series. Yay. I can't wait to get back to that book series. Then I'm going to write the 4th book in the Fear series. Then I'm going to write the 1st book in the Book of Jacob series. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to rewrite the 5th book in the Reaper series, and the 5th book in the Fear series, and the 2nd book in the Book of Jacob series. And I'm going to keep that cycle going for as long as I can do it. Now, and every once in a while, I'll probably throw in a one-off here and there. I have a couple of really, really cool ideas that I want to write. But that's going to be, that's my plan for now. I really love the Reapers in the Fear series, and I'm really excited about the Book of Jacob series. So, fingers crossed that it happens painlessly and seamlessly. That is my plan for now. Of course, the best laid plans of mice and men, you know how that goes. Anyway, thank you, Muse, for listening to me. I am going to go shower now because I can see you holding your breath. You don't want to smell me. And there are all sorts of noises going on outside. I don't know what it is. But anyway, Muse, thank you for listening to me as always. And thank you, everyone out there, for being a part of my world. It makes me so honored and happy to know that you are out there and that I can possibly entertain you for a little bit or help you escape reality, because we all need that now and then. Anyway, you, my friends, you are all so very awesome.